I think we're recording. Hi, everybody. This is Eric from the future. I have a head cold, so I sound like a jazz singer. But I had Melissa here from Dad Hands. She flew across the continent to celebrate the launch of the chisels because she did all the illustrations. And we went to Buckle Guy, and she's been helping me build an apartment. We framed out a bathroom, so you might hear some hammering because there's plumbers here. But I wanted to intro this video because I don't think that there's one like this on YouTube yet. And the video is the ultimate guide to marbling leather with Alpha 6 paints. So what you're going to learn from this video is how to do this. I made this one my first try. This is the first panel I think that I marbled. And the first link in the description is going to be where you can get mostly all the stuff from Buckle Guy. They sell Alpha 6. You're going to need carrageenan. Carrageenan, I don't know how to say it. How do you say it?
Carrageenan.
Carrageenan. You gotta get carrageenan. This is jacquard. I'm gonna assume Michaels or Joann Fabrics or Amazon definitely has it. And then the second link is going to be Melissa's marbling guide, which we basically just followed. And I made stuff like this. I made stuff like that. And it's super, super fun. If you want to go monochromatic, I would implore you to buy the guide too. A, because you're supporting Melissa and she took the time to make this video and she took 2 years to correct the process. But B, because there's a lot of troubleshooting in the guide that's not in this video, that if you're having a problem or if you want to mess around with new techniques, she'll teach you how to go to the dollar store and buy a bunch of stuff that seemingly has nothing to do with this, that will allow you to make different patterns and different color combinations and all sorts of cool stuff. And go check out our YouTube channel because she tools beautiful leather. Look, I think I have in my pocket. I carry one of her wallets that she made me. I've been carrying this for a little under a year now. She aged it down. And where am I at? A, B, C, 1, 2, 3, I don't know. But it's a really good video, so I hope you guys enjoy it, and I can't wait to see the marble panels that you make, because once you watch it and figure out how to make it, I'm obsessed. I can't stop marbling, and I had to cut myself off at half a hide because I literally can't afford to buy more leather to marble right now. I have no use for it. Okay? So, enjoy the video. I'll see you at the end.
Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about the carrageenan that you use. My personal favorite is the jacquard? I don't know. Maybe it's French. Who knows? This is the brand I started with. It's a little bit more on the expensive side. It's a little more well-known for a reason. They also have a lot of really great tutorials and whatnot through their own website. The first thing I like to do is you're going to use 4 teaspoons per gallon of water. So I just pre-measure it into a little cup. That way when I'm mixing, I don't have to be like, uh-oh, did I put in 1, 2, 3, 4? Maybe? Who knows? So,
Do you also need to use distilled water?
Yes, distilled water is quite important. A lot of tap water has things like bleach and minerals and whatnot in it. The cleaner the water, the better results you're going to have. So these are only, what do we pay, a couple bucks a piece?
Yes.
You can get them at a drugstore or at your local grocery store. And what I've done is I've gone ahead and warmed up. We're going to be hand mixing just with a little whisk. Generally, I use like a little wand mixer. You can use a power mixer, whatever. In that case, I don't warm up the water, but I'm just going with manufacturer's directions here. So you want to warm up 3 cups of water. This ran a little hot, so I'm going to add some cold water to it too.
Not boiling, just hot, like warm.
Warm, yeah. And temperature plays like a pretty big factor. I've had batches go horribly sideways because my studio was too cold. You want to keep things at room temperature. Carrageenan also will last in the fridge up to 30 days, but it's really important if you're going to use it to take it out and let it get to room temperature.
So if I could add in here, if you have an electric mixer, use that instead.
It's ideal. We wanted to show like how to do it with basic at-home stuff. Everybody's got a whisk, maybe.
Yeah, but definitely use like an electric mixer if you can, because...
So there's still some like small chunks, which is fine. That will dissipate, like I said, as you let it sit. But you can see it's getting much thicker. And so what we want to do is we want to incorporate this, like I said, 4 teaspoons gets incorporated into a gallon total. So another reason I like to use the distilled water and buy little jugs of it is you also have a container for your mix to sit and settle and whatnot in. The ratio is 4 teaspoons of the powder to 1 gallon of water. So once you've mixed your 3 cups worth, I just add it back in, give it a shake, and let it settle for a few hours and set up the rest of the workstation.
And that's 4 teaspoons of the dried carrageenan. So we've mixed 4 teaspoons into 3 cups of water, but remember there's still only going to be 3 teaspoons in this whole gallon of water. It can get a little confusing. 4 teaspoons.
4 teaspoons.
It can get a little confusing. So we want 4 teaspoons in the entire gallon, not just in the 3 cups.
And you don't want to just like huck 4 teaspoons in dry and shake it and hope for the best. It's not going to incorporate very well that way.
So now we incorporate?
Yeah. Now we're just giving it a shake until it all kind of blends together. We're just going to let it sit for a few hours. And when we come back, this will be all nice and smooth and clear and ready to go.
And now this is what we float on top of water.
We float
to
the
put our
paint.
paints in?
We float the paint
in
on
that.
top of this.
Okay, got it.
That's why we're thickening the water. It gives a base for the paints to float. Otherwise, they would just sink to the bottom.
Got it.
I'm just going to go over a couple little sort of prep things, mixing paint and different kinds of applications. One thing I like to make is these little brushes it's actually just made out of regular old broom heads. We got it at the dollar store for $1.25 yesterday. You can get these pre-made, but they're quite expensive. Ooh, big fan of cutting costs as much as possible, especially with stuff like this. It's something you kind of toss out at the end. So all I'm doing is I've cut one of the little sections out, throw an elastic band around it, and then you just kind of melt the little ends together. It's not completely necessary, but it does keep it from kind of falling out. So now that we have a bunch of other tools we got at the dollar store also. We'll get more into those a little bit later. So next step to prep work is mixing your paint. We're going to be using Alpha Flex by Alpha 6. Buckle Guy carries all of it. This is by far, I've tried 3 different brands of paint. This is my favorite. It's the most durable. I've had to like stretch panels out and it hasn't flaked or cracked and it ages absolutely beautifully. It's typically used in the sneaker industry. Just really, really great paint. So, but the way that it comes, it's a little bit too thick for what we're doing. So we're going to mix it down a little bit. Okay, so the way I like to do this is in just these little bottles. Again, they were like 2 for $1 at the dollar store. I'm going to throw a little paint in. In the guide, I also go over the ratio for using Angelus paints, which is the first paint I ever used with marbling. With the Alpha 6 line, they have a water-based reducer, and they do specify that using just regular water will affect the adhesion, so I tend to just kind of go with the manufacturer on that. And I'm doing about a 3 parts paint to 1 part reducer, and I like to keep these little bits that I cut off the end of rivets and use them as like little mixing balls in the bottle. I'm just going to give that a shake. Runny, but not too runny. And I will test these on the surface of the size once we get that part all set up.
Okay, so one tip I can give you is I got an ivory base. And if you want to go for a more vintagey vibe, this is kind of an orangey red. This is just straight ivory. This is a sort of a teal faded green color. I lightened up the blue a lot, and this is actually mustard, but it didn't mix on the outside. So you can't really go by what it looks like on the outside of my bottles. Melissa's bottles, she has a great mix because she knows how to do this, and I might seal a little bit of her purple.
Well, before we get started, I like to just give this a little bit of a tip. You don't want to shake it super hard. You want to try to avoid bubbles as much as possible. And I'm just going to slowly pour it into one corner. Again, not too fast. You want to try to avoid surface bubbles.
And we also got these pans at the dollar store too.
Yes. I have fancy enamel ones that I use at home, but that's because I do large scale production of marble panels. They're not necessary at all. One thing to note as well, this thickened water is quite slippery. So if you're working in a space that has a hardwood floor, you want to be really careful. Just be mindful of any spills. You don't want to slip, toss a hip out, or anything like that. So we do have a couple, like there's a giant chunk right there. What I like to do is I'll just take a piece of paper towel, just kind of get that out of there. I'm just going to test the viscosity of my paint. When it hits the water, you want it to spread but not too much. That's perfect. And you do work quite quick when you're doing it. So I'm just going to quickly run through, test all my colors. Just to make sure I'm happy with them. If they're too heavy, they'll sink to the bottom, which is not ideal. If they're too light, they'll just spread out and become nothing. So as part of the prep, I just rip strips of newspaper, and you're just going to lightly drag them across the surface of your size, and it's going to clear out all that unwanted paint. Just like that. I found a palette of about 3 to 5 colors seems to be kind of the sweet spot. There's a few ways to apply it. My personal favorite is just these little bottles, but you can also use these little straws that we made to tap your paint out along the surface. Something to keep in mind is the first color you lay down is going to be the color that gets seen the least. And the color that you put on last will be your most predominant color. And the way I like to work is I actually work in layers, so I kind of cheat around that a little bit. And you want to work quickly. You have about a 3 to 4 minute window, otherwise the paint can start to crack on the surface, and that is not great. Once you see it start to really sort of thicken and bolden up, you know you've got about the right amount of paint on your surface. Once it starts sinking to the bottom, it means your surface is oversaturated and it's time to stop. There's all kinds of traditional sort of methods and patterns. I personally prefer a little more flowy, sort of freeform way of doing it. You can use combs, you can use little rakes, you can make specific patterns. Like I said, I personally, my style is a little more freeform, a little flowy, but that's it. So you want to use all natural veg tan, untreated, unglazed, straight as the way it was meant to be. I like to use like a 3 to 4 ounce. If it's a little too thick, it's a little bit harder to dip. You're going to hold a couple corners nice and taut. I like to bend it, and so you kind of start in the middle and just slowly lower it down. It's okay, some of it's going to leak over the back. That's all part of the process. And then I just gingerly tap it down to try to alleviate any air bubbles that might be stuck under the surface. And there we go.
Holy crap.
So I prefer to, some people rinse theirs, I just hang it to dry. And some of the kind of like blurry bits or whatever will just sort of travel down as it dries, but that's it. Avoid scrubbing it. That's a really bad move. I know you're going to want to, but don't do it. Sometimes I'll also like just lightly spray it with a little bit of water, but pretty happy with that.
That's crazy looking. It took like no time.
That's it. And when you're ready to go to your next panel, just clear off any of the excess paint.
All right, so my turn. I have my thickened water poured. I'm just calling it thick water.
Sure.
And as you can see, I've tried out all my paints. They're the right viscosity. And then we were filming, and I was like, all right, I'm going to do a stripe of green. And I did a stripe straight across, and you can see it sank right to the bottom. So what you have to do is do dots. You want to do dots instead. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start from the middle. And I'm going to do some dots of cream, which doesn't look like it's going to do much.
Let's go a little closer to the surface.
Okay. Then I'm going to do some dots of the perfect mustard.
Yeah.
Okay. Then we're going to go with some of our pink out here. Oh, too close.
No, it's too much paint.
Oh, it's too much paint. Either way, we're going to make it happen.
I mean, that's kind of the fun of this, is you get to experiment and see what actually works and what doesn't.
Yeah. Then I'm going to come around the outside here with the green. And then it's blue time. I'm going to go way outside with the blue. This is probably not going to look very good, but we will find out. Then I think I'm going to go in with a little more of the ivory and go there, maybe a little bit here. Now what I want to try to do, I'm going to take a comb and I'm going to start out here and I'm going to rake this around. And then I'm going to rake that around. And then I'm going to rake that. This is fun.
Yeah.
You're just kind of playing around.
Yep.
Not necessarily the prettiest thing I've ever seen in the world. Now, can you add more paint after you've done this? If you're like, oh, it needs more.
Yeah, you can add little drops and stuff.
All right.
Yep, absolutely.
So I want a little more of this orangey color over here and over there and in here. And I want a little more mustard. Got to put a little more mustard in it. I'll put some in there too. Now I'm going to switch to an even broader comb. And I'm going to kind of do this situation, and then I'm going to come back and really mess with it. And you can like loop it around. Oh yeah, oh.
Yeah, there you go.
But if it's clear, then it's going to come out as natural on the leather, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't think this is going to be what I would define my career as for my first one, but we're going to go with it.
I mean,
So
it's literally your first one.
True.
It's looking really cool.
So I kind of want everything ultimately going the same direction, which I think would be more a traditional look. So I'm just going to, it seems like you got to go kind of gentle, or you'll get like a
whirlpool going.
Yeah, you get like a tide going, and you have a flowing river of paint that you can't control very well.
Yeah, that's looking cool though.
I'm not mad at it.
No, I think that looks great.
At all. I worked really hard on this mustard, so we'll see how that goes. Go that way. All right, so I think that's where I want to go with it.
All right, you ready to dip?
I'm ready to dip. So I'm starting from the middle.
Yep. So hold opposing diagonal corners.
Diagonal corners.
Yep. Kind of fold it a little like a taco.
Fold it like a taco.
Yep. And then slowly.
And then I can also place where I want it to go, right? Like I can,
yeah,
okay.
wherever in the pan you want.
Cool. All right, so I think that I'm going to go from corner to corner here because there's some blank elements here that I'm not super interested in.
Yeah.
All right. And then just gently press it.
Yep.
Overlap as expected. Mm-hmm. And then when I lift it, I was filming so I didn't pay attention. I just lift it?
Nope. grab the corners closest to you.
Corners closest to me.
Yeah, and then slowly drag it out.
Slowly drag it like over the into the pan.
Over the lip, yeah. It kind of squeegees off the excess.
Okay. All right, let's see if I pulled off. You ready?
Yeah, ready.
It is ugly.
I don't know, man.
That's actually not that bad.
I love that. What are you talking about?
That's pretty cool. That's like, it's groovy. A little mustardy, but groovy. I'll take it.
No, congratulations.
Hey.
You're a marbler.
I'm a marbler. That's pretty groovy.
It's beautiful.
That is not easy. Holy moly.
It took me about a year to really nail it down.
But I would make a wallet out of that. That's a cool pattern. Even just to like hop in for my first try. I'm into that. That's very cool.
You're killing it.
Nice. That purple made it. Hi, how are you? That actually is my voice. I got sick and it just made me sound kind of like Elvis. And so these are my panels that I made. And these are Melissa's panels. But she's going to take over because I am in no shape to be talking to you guys. Even though it sounds fun to... it's fun to sound like a 65-year-old professional audiobook recording artist. So this is how we top coat and protect the marbling that we did so the paint doesn't fall off. And these have been drying like a few days because we have other stuff to do. You don't need to let them dry a few days. You just need to overnight?
Overnight.
Just overnight. Yeah. Okay, here we go.
So as Eric said, we let these dry for a couple days. I prefer to hang them to dry. It allows some of the stuff to drip off of them. There is always going to be a little bit of leftover carrageenan. You can see there's like, this is the last one I pulled out of the entire night of marbling stuff. So there's like a little bit of the sludge left. So what we're going to do is we're going to buff that off. I like to use just white cotton rag material. Get it at Home Depot. Comes in a giant box, super cheap. And so you don't want your rag too soaked, and you want to use a very soft touch. You don't want to scrub the underlying paint off. You just want to get this like little layer of goo off. I prefer not to rinse my panels while they're wet and fresh out of marbling. I just wait and do this part when it's dry. As you can see, you can get some of that streaking out, but don't rub too hard or you're going to start removing paint. Now, this is the Alpha 6 clear coat, and again, the water-based reducer. The clear coat as is quite thick when you get it. It works for some applications, but I prefer to cut it down. So I've gone ahead, I was doing some panels the other day, and cut it to a nice thin consistency. Okay. I just like to apply this with a little sponge brush, or like at home I'll usually use like a large paintbrush, but for the video this will work just fine. Now you don't want too much clear coat, so I usually squeegee a bit out, and it's best to work quick, and you don't want to go over it too many times. So I like to just lay down one quick, even coat. This stuff does self-level to some extent, but you don't want, pools or bubbles or anything like that. Okay, so now the first coat's dry. If you want it to age out, kind of wear off over time, you can leave it at that. But I prefer to do a second coat so it stays nice and bright for longer. If you want more sort of in-depth tips and tricks, the guide linked below has a lot of that, a lot of things I learned by doing and trial and error and whatnot, and just wanted to share with y'all. So from here, this is a matte clear coat, so it is quite flat. I prefer a little bit of shine, so what I like to do, and also just to protect it, is I just throw a quick coat of Aussie conditioner onto it.
I made those. They're very hippy dippy, and this one looks like a candy cane. But I'm gonna leave mine. The microphone was over there. I made these. They're very hippy dippy looking, and that one looks like a candy cane. I'm gonna leave mine at one coat because I want it to get all fadey. So yeah, so 2 coats, bright forever. 1 coat, fade away. So if you like patina, probably do 1 coat. And here we go. So these are Melissa's 2, and these are 2 that I made. Now, first link in the description. Buckeye carries Office 6 paint. They carry a lot of tools. Go to your local dollar store. Basically everything else we got at the dollar store, which is $1.25 now, inflation, but you know, it is what it is. And then the Carrageenan, I guess. Carrageenan, you got to get from like Joann Fabrics, or Jacquard makes it, so like Amazon if you're an Amazon user, whatever. What we're going to close out with is, I can already see, oh, could you use Tokonol as a top coat? Yes, so that's my question too. So this is a panel that I made that has like some little dippy dots of natural that showed through. And I'm just going to get some just full strength Tokonol and rubber in there. And Tokonol has acrylic resin in it, so in theory this should be a decent, this is way too much Tokonol, but we're just going to go with it. It has acrylic resin in it, so in theory this should seal the color, the paint, onto the leather in a way that I'm assuming is kind of like the top coat that we did. I'm just going to use a bone folder. You can use a glass slicker if you have one. It's also going to be kind of akin to plating leather. If you hear drilling in the background, there's a bathroom being installed finally, so sorry, but also not sorry because it took so long to book a plumber. So we're gonna, this really is gonna flatten this, and I'm wondering if it's gonna make it shiny. So after I use my bone folder to basically plate this, right, I'm just gonna take some rags, wipe it down a little bit. The bone folder, or ideally a glass slicker, will push the Tokonol into the leather, and now we're just basically buffing it out. And I'm going to grab a horsehair brush and really try to give it a little bit more of a shine. And that's how we're going to end the video. So, this has been a guide on marbling with Melissa from Dad Hands. I can't wait to see what you guys marble, because this is super fun and it's really cool to like combine different colors and play around with it for hours and hours and hours. And that's about it. So thank you guys so much for watching, and see you in the next one.